Hey there everyone, this is Andrew Kimmons with Kimmons Toolworks, and today I'm making a video that's been requested quite a few times by customers, and I'm finally getting around to doing this. It's a honing process video of how I hone and finish my tools. What a lot of people have noticed is that when they get tools from me, they've probably, chances are, they haven't encountered an edge that's as sharp as what they see. I get that all the time where it's like, this is the sharpest thing I've ever come in contact with. So, and it's super easy. You know, sharpness doesn't mean complicated. There's absolutely no reason to overcomplicate the process of honing. It's a super simple process. You're essentially creating an edge on an abrasive, and all that matters is that you structure the perfect apex without excess material on the end of it. Because as you hone, a burr folds up. And by up, I mean as you hone with a chisel this way, that burr folds back here. And all of that burr is non-functional material, and you don't want that. And chances are, in a lot of cases, I mean, mind you, a lot of tools don't have very good edge retention these days. That's just what it is. With steel quality and manufacturing processes being what they are, tools aren't what they used to be. And that's a big part of why I've started making these at all, was to improve upon that a little bit. But what a lot of people notice if they're having difficulty with edge retention with their tools, it's because their process is almost too complicated and too intricate. And there's a lot of honing and flattening and honing and flattening. And all that does is it draws out and it shapes a burr, and it puts that burr straight to where it looks like an edge and it cuts like an edge, but then you go back to cut again and again and it doesn't work. And it's like, well, I don't know what the heck happened. The steel doesn't hold an edge. And unfortunately, that's usually not the case. So getting your honing practices spot on is like step one for any woodworker, because you want your tools to hold an edge and to perform and to cut. And a big chunk of that's the manufacturer's responsibility, and a big chunk of that is the customer's responsibility for doing that. So I'm going to go through my very simplistic process on how to hone, because once again, making a good edge does not have to be complicated. And I'm one to constantly be changing and evolving my processes as I can make something. I mean, if I can make something better, I'll do that. If I can make something as good but easier, I'll do that too. Because you're essentially rubbing a piece of steel on a rock. So let's keep it simple. Like, this is stuff monkeys can do. And if you overthink it, chances are you're starting to run a risk of screwing up or having a subpar edge if you're just way overthinking the process. So keep it simple. Keep it as simple as it is. And one thing that I recommend against is in between honing, like if you're honing, do not flip it and lap it, because it's going to take off some of the burr, but it's also going to fold a lot of the burr back forward. So then you flip it around again and you craft more burr, and you flip it and then you straighten the burr out, and then you flip it and craft more burr, and you keep doing that in progressively finer grits until it looks like you've got this killer edge, but it's just a piece of crap. It's just non-functional. So don't do that. It just doesn't work as well. If you want to do that, hey, that's all on you. It doesn't work as well. That's what I've found, for me at least. So let's keep this simple. When it comes to honing customer tools, I use a honing guide, because, for the obvious reason, if I tell a customer it's a 30-degree secondary bevel, I want it to be that. That way they can match it. And as much as I've honed in my life, I'll tell you right now, I mean, I hand hone all of my own stuff. I would never even think about using a honing guide on my own stuff, because to me, it doesn't matter if it's 27 or 22 or 32 or whatever, but I'm not going to do that with a customer tool. So I don't, and I make sure that they're 30 or as close to 30 as I can get. So I have a bunch of tools lined up here that I'm going to hone today. I don't think we need to go through honing all of them, because there's quite a few over here. what I'll do is I'll come down with the camera and we'll talk a little bit about what I've got going on here. All right. What I have going on down here is my 3 favorite stones for honing woodworking tools. And this is really all you need unless you are doing a primary bevel or something like that. If you're resetting a primary bevel, nothing here is going to be efficient or effective for that. It would take you forever to do that. As always, I recommend grinding the primary bevel if you have the equipment to do that. And also being very careful to not overheat it with steels like A2 and even CPM MagnaCut. The CPM M4 tools I have out there, even if you blew that grinding, it's not going to do anything to it. It'll still be just as hard. But with the A2, not so much. These are A2. It's actually a beautiful tool. I've already got the honing guide set up on this, but that's Zero Coat. It's one of my personal favorites. It doesn't show up very well in the camera, but it's an extremely beautiful wood. And what I do, I have some lines over here, and I just do that. I don't know if you can see it around this, but all I do is I just adjust it in the honing guide to where it's out the right amount, tighten it down, which I forgot my pliers. Let me go grab my pliers really quick. Tighten it down a little bit. And what we have here is a pretty simple progression. This is a DMT fine, and I think that's about, I think these come as 1200 grit. Once they're broken in like this, it's not 1200 grit. It's finer than that. But with the edge ground to a good apex already, you don't need anything more coarse than that. This is a DMT extra fine. This is their 8000 grit. And I'll tell you right now, once this thing's broken in, which when you buy these 8K stones and you first use them, your impression will be it cuts like a 1200 grit stone. There's some big diamonds on it, super rough. And then you use it for a while, and what you'll notice is it looks like all of the binder and the diamonds are just torn off the top of it. And you'll look at it and you'll be like, what the heck, this thing's a piece of crap. There's nothing on there. It's like just down to bare metal. Like you can see that it kind of looks like it's just scratched off down to bare metal. But that's when it gets good. That's when you want to use it. And once you get it to this point, it'll stay good like this for years. I've been using this stone like professionally for probably 3 years. So I highly recommend the DMT extra fine. Just don't go into it with an unrealistic expectation, because the mesh size that they use to measure out the diamonds, like you'll get some big ones, you'll get some small ones, but once it gets to the point where it looks like it's torn up and like torn to shreds, that's when it's good. So from that point, we go from the fine DMT to the extra fine DMT, and then we come down to my personal favorite finishing stone for woodworking tools. Everybody has their own personal favorite, totally okay. If you have a personal favorite and it works for you and you get great results, stick with it. Like there's no reason to change it. But if you're somebody like me and you like to tinker and experiment and you haven't gotten into Arkansas stones, a black Arkansas stone from Dan's Whetstone is primo. Like these, I will not buy an Arkansas stone from anybody but Dan's. Every one of these I've ever bought has come perfectly finished, perfectly flat. Just the quality is astronomically good. And even 3 or 4 years ago, used to be able to get these in the translucents for pretty cheap. I was looking at it because I wanted to get another one in the bathroom for my straight razors from Dan's, a smaller one. And I did not realize how much these have gone up in price. So that, of course, affects my recommendation a little bit. But if you're after quality, go with Dan's. I mean, sadly, you're going to pay for it these days. I think when I bought this stone, it was 80 bucks. And now I think they're over 200. So that was the last time I looked. Great stone. I have nothing bad to say about any stone I've ever had from Dan's. They're the best. So I think, as you might have already noticed, I hone on oil. Why do I hone on oil? For a number of reasons. Steel and water don't mix very well, especially if you're going to send a tool to a customer. I would much rather hone on oil and avoid the corrosion risk. That, and I frankly, I think it just works better. I think that having the larger size of the oil molecule makes the edge finer, because you look at how fine a water molecule is, and you're essentially rolling over water molecules when you're honing on water. So you go to a light viscosity oil like what I use WD-40, that's all I use. It's a very light viscosity oil, meaning the oil molecule size is relatively small, but still much larger than water. So you're rolling over a bigger molecule, and you have to think those molecules sit in between the valleys of the peaks of the grid itself, and they make it perform finer ever so slightly. And so I like that. Where I'm going to start right now is I'm going to hit the back of this to start with, just to get the very end of it a little bit more lapped than it was. These have already been lapped, but then I go through my finishing process on the grinder, and then I just hit the tip ever so slightly. That way, any burr from the grinder is forward. You'll see why this is the way it is. So what we do with the honing guide, we're going to start, and this is a 30-degree bevel, and take a few strokes, and I like to use the whole width of the stone until you feel a burr all the way across evenly. And then I'll flip it and I'll look at it, and I'll make sure the secondary bevel's all the way across the edge, which we need to do a little bit more. Doesn't do any good if you don't have the entire blade sharp. So there we go. We've set our secondary, and you can actually see the burr on it and some towel lint stuck to it. This is where the magic happens though. All I do is put it on a bench like that on the back, and I put about 15 or 20 pounds of force on it, maybe even more, and I drag it, and that folds the burr up. And so then when you come back to honing, you start on a forward stroke and it takes it off, and you can feel a catch as it rips that burr off. So you give it a few more strokes, little tiny burr, the burr got smaller, same thing, drag it, a few more strokes, same thing, drag it, go onto the finer stone, drag it, there's no debris on there. Onto the black arc. Usually doesn't take more than about 10 strokes, and then drag it, wipe off whatever's on the tip, and then about 3 to 5 strokes. And then what I like to do at this point is just pop a couple hairs and see how it cuts. Ooh, yeah. I mean like a razor blade. Look at that. That's it. That's it. Burr free. Good to go. Nice looking edge. Take it out of my guide. We'll come on and we'll do another size now. In the honing guide. And part of the reason why I use this method is because I can fly through and I can hone 30 chisels in a half hour or so, 40 minutes. And which that wouldn't be good if the edges sucked. I wouldn't do it quickly if the edges sucked. But they don't suck. They're extremely sharp, and that's why I do it. That's why I say having to lap your tools constantly, if you use this method, that's obsolete. Because it just doesn't matter. Like once you use up the part of the chisel where it's lapped, lap it again, leave it alone. You don't need it. Lapping doesn't even have to be part of normal honing. like all you got to do is drag that burr off. You don't ever have to worry about just sitting there and lapping and lapping and lapping during the honing process. It's just a waste of time. Of course, though, if you have a way that works for you, and that way involves lapping as part of the maintenance of the tool, then go for it. I mean, use whatever works well for you too, but all I'm saying is this works for me. And so you can see, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, piece of burr from where the burr popped off. That's one thing you want to make sure to do, is make sure there's no burr on the stone when you start over. Then we come in. Take a look at it. Get everything even. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see if you can see the burr on the back. Probably not. My camera's not that good, but it's got a big old burr on the back, but evenly across it. So we come in and we bend that burr off. Start on a forward stroke to snap it, because if you start on a back stroke, it folds the burr back out. So you want to snap it off. So we've snapped our burr off, and we've formed a smaller burr, but still a burr. You fold back the smaller burr, and then you do another few strokes. And you formed another burr, but an even smaller burr. Knock it off. And right there you get about to the point where there's no burr. But then you want to progress in grit, obviously, so you form another burr. Add a finer grit. Very small burr when you get into the fine grits. Bend it forward. Bend it forward. Go on to the black arc. Once you get that bevel established, you can overhone the crap out of it. So like, if you notice, the last time I break the burr off, I'll go to the black arc and I'll do like 3 strokes. Because any more than that, you're just going to build burr. You're already out to the end. So if you go in and you put 20 strokes on it thinking, you know, if I put more strokes on it, it'll get better, it just doesn't work that way. It gets astronomically worse with every stroke. So once you get your secondary bevel established, you get it relatively fine, and while controlling the burr the whole time, you come down to here and you get it in sync with that grit, snap the burr off for the final time, like 3 strokes. Like if you go further than that, you're overhoning it and you're just bringing burr up. So like the point of getting rid of the burr was to get rid of the burr. So you don't want to, on your final step, recraft a burr. So, and usually they're extremely sharp by the time I get done with this process. And I mean, I don't even need to check them at this juncture of my life. I could hone through all of the tools that I have sitting here this way and not even check the edges, and I know they would all be that sharp, because if you do something thousands and thousands and thousands of times and you know the steel extremely well, like, and you design the heat treatment procedures for it and know how it hones, like, mind you, I always do check them because I'm not going to send a customer a dull tool. And part of this too, I get the final feel of the steel by honing all the tools that go out. And honing a tool, especially if you have experience with blade steel and stuff like that, honing it is kind of when you get real feedback from it for the first time. Like you kind of, it's like having your first conversation with it. It's just a feel thing. I mean, you can't talk to a piece, I guess you could talk to a piece of steel, but everybody probably think you're nuts. But, so yeah, it's my first feedback I get from it, I guess, would be the way to put that. And it's really when I know, in that moment when I'm honing a tool before they get shipped out, that's when I know how that tool's going to perform for its life of it, you know? And so I couldn't imagine See, it's like, I just couldn't imagine not honing the tools this way, because that's, I guess I'm weird. That's just how I get the feel for it. To know, like, it's that final validation that what I'm sending is good. Just that last little lap on the tip of this. Make sure everything's in sync. Make sure we have no burrs. Fold whatever burr I have up. And start on a forward stroke. Progress through that. Everything's in sync. Just a couple more little forward strokes. You see, I do a lot of burr control when I hone. Onto here. Very nice. And that's it. And this really makes maintaining tools very easy, especially since you get to kind of skip a lot of the maintenance lapping that a lot of people do, where it's lapping is just kind of part of their process for honing. And I used to do it, and then I thought, okay, what's the point? I mean, obviously you want to lap your tool so that it's flat for use, but once it's there, the only point in lapping would be to control the burr. And why do that when there's better, quicker ways to do it that don't just accentuate the burr and continue to fold it outward? So this is the method I'm currently using, and I hope this clicked with some people and maybe makes your life a little bit easier. Like I've said many times in my videos, if you have a method that works extremely well for you and you like that method, and you have a set of stones that works extremely well for you and you like them, you're winning. Leave it as is, unless you're curious and want to try something different like I do. I have so many stones at this point in my life, it's stupid. I mean, antique ones. I've got crap jammed in my closet. I've got this thing in the dining room with drawers, and it's like one of the entire drawers is full of sharpening stones, and like the thing underneath it, and I have a drawer in my toolbox that's sharpening. That's just kind of everywhere. And I've done that to figure out what works best for me for different things. And the reason being, not like, this is my favorite set of stones for honing woodworking tools, in particular chisels and plane irons. But if I'm honing my kitchen knives or my pocket knife, I don't use these stones because other edges are more optimal. For example, a more coarse diamond edge, like what this DMT fine would be, an edge off of that and then hit a few times on a steel is like optimal for a kitchen knife. For my straight razors, I use Belgian conical stones, or I have a really cool Arkansas stone that I got from a guy. He sent me a chunk cut off of a boulder of this. It's called Doda Creek Arkansas stone, and the whole back of it looks like a boulder, like the edge of a boulder, and it's got a fossilized seashell in it. And I've used that quite a bit for honing my straight razors, and it's a really, really good edge as well. So these are kind of my processes here. I hope this has clicked with some people. I'm tinkering with some new stuff, things that have been requested quite often because I'm waiting on a shipment of material. So that's usually when I will go through and make a new thing, is if materials get delayed for whatever reason. And what I'm working on is a couple different things. And if you want these, send me an email at andrew@kimmonshandtools.com, which has been about the only platform I've tried to keep up on consistently for the last couple months or so. I've been extremely busy with both personal life and, you know, work and all of this. So keeping up on it, but I have a new thing here. Two new things, actually. I am doing fishtail chisels now as well. And I wanted to make a fishtail chisel with a very heavy duty shaft. So I went with 3/16, and it's tapered down like that. And then the cutting blade itself is extremely fine. Hopefully I can get this, but the flats on it are extremely small. It looks like my camera is just not working very well today, and these bevels are 45 degree. So the clearance on this is insane. And the blade itself is very, very thin at the end, but also robust. I didn't want to make a fishtail chisel on the 1/8" platform. I just think it's not durable enough for my particular taste. I like to make things a little bit more robust than that. And so these are going to be available, and I'm thinking about doing them from 3/8 to 5/8 in 16" increments. So if you would like to get one of these, a couple of these, a set of them, andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. Obviously, all the same handle options apply. This is just an extra that I had. That's some weird maple that I put this in because this is my personal one. And I also have another thing that I did because what I noticed about tools like this, extremely light blade, very heavy handle, completely round, small, they tend to roll off of benches very, very easy. So for people that would use these a lot, I had a good idea, and because it's something I personally wanted, because I can see myself losing this to rolling off the bench. But regardless, I know a lot of people like that style. This is the same socket tang handles as always, but I also made one, which is kind of cool, to match the scrapers, which it's like a scraper handle, but it's a fishtail chisel. Same heavy duty platform. It's the 3/16 platform, tapered down. Same exact kind of situation we got going on here. Very, very fine side flats. So this thing, the clearance on this thing would just be absolutely wicked. And G10 handles, they're bolt-on, so you can take them off. Like when you buy these tools, let's say you have some really cool old wood laying around, you know, pop it in the bandsaw, cut it 3/16, 1/8", whatever. You can use the hardware and just craft your own handles. Like you can put whatever handles you want on it, but they just come with this black G10. And I'm gonna make a video about how to do that because it is so easy to make handles for things like this. You could probably, any well-equipped woodworker could probably put a set of scales on something like this in a half hour maybe. So those are available as well. Andrew@kimmonshandtools.com. Same sizes. We're gonna go 3/8 to 5/8 and 16" increments. If you want a bigger one or a smaller one, let me know. I'm flexible. That's the point of custom tools. So I'm also going to do, because this is just a honing video, but I'm also going to do, well, this one doesn't have the primary on it yet, as you can see, but I'm also going to do a video probably tomorrow of all the stuff I'm honing today and go through this, and I'll set up to where we can get a better look at this where the lighting's better. But hope everyone has a great day out there. And I hope everyone learned a little bit of something from this, or that they can take something away from this in some way, because this weird little process that I have going on here has taken me kind of almost 30 years to develop, even though it's so simple. But I had to go full circle. to, you know, simple to complicated to really complicated to super overly complicated. And the more complicated I made it, the worse my edges would get over the years. So then I just came back full circle to just doing it so simplified. And as I would approach a more simpler method, everything got better. And that, in that simplicity range, that's when I started being able to really hone straight razors too, because there's a psychosis that a lot of people have, particularly people that would even buy really high-end custom tools, have the same kind of thing that I do, where you're very particular. You want the very best edge. You want to carefully craft this sucker to a T. But that, excuse my language, will bite you in the ass. It will. When you've gone all the way to the point of overcomplicated, and I have known some phenomenal woodworkers that have encountered the same problem that I have with this, where, you know, they'll have issues honing. I'll talk to them and be like, whoa, man, like your process is really complicated. I get that there's a satisfaction, a mental satisfaction when you're a very particular person to walking an edge through 8 different grits. It's just wholly unnecessary. And too much honing is a very bad thing. Less is more in honing. If you're finishing, even, and I'm talking black Arkansas remove material slower than just about any stone on the face of the planet. And on your final pass on a stone, if you're using more than 3 to 5 strokes, you're way over honing. So just so you know. Anyway, have a great day out there. Hope everyone learned something. I'll see you next time.